Welcome back. This is Econ 305 News. It's 10 a.m. and I'm Carissa Lima.
And I'm Chris Saunders.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about what TTP is and its positive impacts in Canadian economy.
So what is TPP11? TPP11 is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is also a free trade agreement that has high standards towards trade and investment within Asian Pacific countries. And over here on the globe that you can see, United States used to be part of the TPP, which was called TPP12, but since they opted out, it is now TPP11. These countries that are associated with TPP11 are Canada, Brunei, Australia, Mexico, Chile, Peru, New Zealand, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and also Vietnam. The TPP was designed to boost and deepen economic ties within these nations. It was to build a relationship for them to come together on economic policies and regulations. It was also for them to have a way for them to encourage more trade and to also help these nations boost their economic growth and to also introduce more imports and exports within and across these nations.
Okay, today to discuss the impacts on the Canadian economy, we have brought three Canadian economists. First we have Samia, and she's gonna explain the impacts on the Canadian trade market.
Thank you, Carissa, for the introduction and a good question. So, when it comes to trade, I just want to include it. We know the smart approach for countries is to focus on the product they have advantage in skills and resources to optimize the benefits of the trade. TPP, I think it will provide significant market access gain to Canadian exporters, especially in the market where they were facing high tariffs before. They were facing high tariff for Japan and so other countries. And as we know that Canada stands strongly for their export of agriculture and food products. In that area, some example of increased revenue are provided in the table there, and you can see that wheat before TPP it was 40,000 export tons, and after TPP it is 53, and the same is barley. We jumped from 25 to 65 after TPP. So that's one of the examples. So I am sure that Canada will benefit hugely with this free trade agreement once it is in full implementation, and we will come out of the recession.
Thank you, Samia, for explanation. Okay, Samia, can you please explain us what's the effect of TPP on flow of income once it's fully implemented?
Thank you for your question, Carissa. Yes, let's see how TTP will affect on the circular flow of income in Canada when it is in full implementation. So we see, I bring out that chart here. We see here how the economy of the country is connected with certain factors. So if you talk about the product market, TPP make it attractive for private and public sectors to invest in business when there is less hassle in export and import. That means more trade, which will bring more business, and people want to invest. They always want to invest in stable economy, and that's how, if we talk about the consumption, so more trade, the same thing, more trade means more profit, which leads to more production, which create more employment and push back the economy toward the potential GDP. People purchasing power will rise, and it will affect on consumer-induced spending. Government can collect more taxes from businesses and from the household with more people in employment, and that will increase the tax revenue and bracket for government to spend depending upon the economic situation. If we talk about the leakages and injections here, so as for our current situation, we are in recession. So of course our leakages are greater than our injection, which should not be right. Right now it's not a good scenario. We need more injections. So TPP, we think, is the way to provide the injections and close that recessionary gap. And as reported in so many reports, that it is a strong and growing, there is strong and growing demand for Canadian agricultural products. So we can confidently say that Canadian GDP will hugely benefit from exporting this market.
Samia, would you be able to explain to us, with the implementation of TPP, how would it affect inflation and unemployment?
Good question, Chris. I think unemployment and inflation, they will both get affected by Trans-Pacific Partnership. This partnership means more investment, more export, which directly affect the businesses and their respective production, with which will decrease the rate of cyclical unemployment, which is right now we are facing in recession. It's our main concern now, and that's what exactly Canada is needed to close that recessionary gap, which to come out of the recession. I think the field which will benefit from TPP could be food and agricultural industry, as it is a strong export product for Canada. And according to data, 80% of top Canadian exports are raw and semi-product food. And you asked a good question about inflation and inflation and recession. I think the TPP will act more like self-adjusting tool in both phases, because not only Canada will benefit with free trade to increase its GDP for closing the recessionary gap, but free trade will also increase consumer access to high quality products and lower price goods, which will help economy to self-adjust itself if we face the inflation gap in future.
Okay, let's first talk about how exchange rate works. There is two kind of policies regarding to exchange rate. One is fixed exchange rate. As you can see here, there is a demand curve and supply curve for Canadian dollar in foreign markets. When for some reason demand curve shifts to the right, there is no change in supply curve, and there will be a shortage for Canadian dollar in foreign markets. In flexible exchange rate model, when there is a change in demand, there will be a change in supply as well, and the market will reach a new equilibrium. Canadian policies regarding to exchange rate is the second one, flexible exchange rate, and the effect of TPP on a Canadian exchange rate would be a new equilibrium. Yeah, that's it. TPP11 includes 500 million people, which combined own 13% of world GDP. TPP removes tariffs on 90% of goods, provides greater protection for intelligence property, and includes provision to improve minimum labor standard for workers in the members' countries. TPP removes barriers in trade between these 11 countries. It removes tariff barriers and some non-tariff barriers as well, such as different health and safety regulation in members' country. The biggest prize in this deal for Canada is Japan. It has a lot of consumers, but it's a highly protected market, especially in agriculture. Canadian beef, for example, faced tariff as high as 39% before TPP. Another example is canola oil. We could ship unprocessed raw seeds to Japan, but tariffs prevented us from value adding and shipping canola oil. Now all these barriers are removed, and countries can only use import quota to have some level of control on what being imported to their countries. As you can see in this chart, international trade has a positive impact on world GDP. In the past decades, after world trade has increased, we have witnessed an increase in world GDP as well.
Okay, Carissa, would you be able to explain how the implementation of TPP will affect the economy's multiplier?
Okay, because of injection of extra income leads to more spending, I'm going to explain the multiplier effect. So an increase in income will affect the illicit spending, and you have to remember that income not consumed, it's saved. So as your income is going to go up, your consumption is also going to go up, and your savings is also going to go up, and this is also going to affect aggregate expenditure. And so the multiplier effect refers to the increase in the final income arising from any new injections of spending, and so on.
Carissa, would you be able to explain to us the effects that TPP have on the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curves?
Oh yeah, sure, Chris. Well, now Canada is in a recession, right? So I'm gonna draw a graph that's gonna show how this looks like. So we have the AS, which is the aggregate supply curve, and then the AD, which is the aggregate demand curve. This is the potential GDP. And then when the equilibrium is below the full employment, we have a recessionary gap, right? So as the TPP is fully implemented, the AD is gonna shift right, which is gonna be around here, and then this is gonna go closer to the full employment, which is the macroeconomic goal. So this can take Canada from recession out of.
What is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy refers to the government's approach towards their own purchases on goods and services, their distribution of transfer payments, and also their collection of taxes. Expansionary policy is a form of a fiscal policy that involves either the decreasing of government spending and increasing in taxes, or the increasing of government spending and increasing of taxes in order to fight recessionary pressure.
So Chris, how has TPP affected Canadian GDP?
Okay, Carissa, before we can answer your question on how TPP11 would affect GDP, we first need to understand that TPP12 was first created and introduced by the United States of America. However, the United States of America decided to opt out from this free trade agreement. On the other hand, though, Canada has seen potential and an opportunity with this new free trade agreement. So Canada has decided to take on the initiative to continue on this free trade agreement, but just without the US. So with the implementation of TPP11, Canada would see an overall increase to their projected real GDP. Canada's overall real projected GDP would increase from 0.068% to a 0.082%. And the cause and rise of the GDP would be mainly from the elimination of tariffs. The free trade agreement is put together to eliminate the taxes that are put on importing goods and exporting goods. So for example, Canada has goods and services and materials that these countries want. With the elimination now of tariffs, Canada can now maximize on the benefits from exporting their goods. And also vice versa, these 10 countries now can maximize on their benefits from importing their goods to Canada. So you're asking, how does this all tie into the fiscal policy? Well, my group and I have decided to take on the expansionary fiscal policy. We believe that with this policy, especially in a recession that we're in, Canada would be able to climb out of the recession. We can take small little steps to get out of the recession, and with the implementation of TPP11, we can decide on what to do once we get to an economy that's no longer in a recession to maintain constant growth and constant productivity within the economy.
So Chris, has the implementation of TPP benefit from the value of currency?
To answer your question on how the value of currency will be affected with the implementation of TPP11, we first need to understand that the TPP11 was first put together because they wanted to increase not only Canada's GDP, but also the other 10 countries' GDP. So with the implementation of TPP11, it allows for more exporting and importing of goods between these nations. And as we start exporting a lot more, our GDP is also going to increase. And as GDP within an economy increases, so does the value of currency increase as well within the economy. Okay, Jairo, would you be able to explain what kind of benefits would a monetary policy receive with an implementation of TPP?
TPP can make use of lower net exports, which means low inflation. How this works is the Bank of Canada has monopoly on interest rates and therefore can increase it. This means for high demand and low supply of money is the same thing as high demand for the Canadian dollar. Lower investments is because people tend to do safe investments, and therefore people will sell their risky assets for safer one. And your bond is sold at a discount because higher rate of interest means higher rate of return for the bond. And all this leads to a lower aggregate demand and reduced spending, which means low inflation and economic stability.
Our team recommends to businesses that businesses should support the TPP. Businesses should explore key markets in the Asian and Latin American countries that make up this agreement. Businesses should also focus on exporting their goods rather than selling their goods domestically. We also recommend to consumers that consumers should support TPP because they have not only better access to goods and materials and services, but they also have cheaper and more valuable products.
Thank you for all the guests coming in today. We had a great conversation about TPP. Now we are open to take questions from the audience. This is Econ 305 News, and I'm Carissa Lima.